Okay, hello. I have been working with some of you independently and noticing how your desktops are arranged and realizing that I need to go over a few housekeeping issues with you to help you organize things and manage things that you might not be aware of since you're still learning. So a couple things. One, I have this image here and you see that this type is pink back here. That type is pink because it's not recognizing the font. So if you ever see some type that's pink in the background, it means that you need to load that font. Now, this is a Japanese font that I don't have right now, so I'm not going to worry about changing that. But the reason why I wanted to show you this is a large file. It's 42 inches wide. I used to work at Children's Museum, and this was an exhibit panel, so it was quite large. So if I want to go and shrink this panel down, I would go and select all, and then I would go to this tool here, which is the scale tool, and I can double click on that, and I can give it a set percentage. So if I make this 10% and I say okay, now I want you to look at this file. So what has happened is the file has shrunk, but the lines have stayed the same thickness. So when they were, at 42 inches, the width of those strokes was 20 points. And so that's obviously not the way I would want this to look. So I am going to show you under Illustrator, there's preferences. For the PC, I believe it's still under Illustrator, but it might be very far down on the list. So under General, there's this button here called Scale, Strokes, and Effects. So you should keep that clicked. So when I say OK, and I select this all again, and I click on the scaling tool, and I double click it, that's how I get this to show up. Okay, so I double click on the scaling tool, and I'm going to I'll put in 20% this time. 20%, OK, and so the drawing looks the same. The thickness of this line is now 4 points, so it has scaled that down. Okay, so that's how you would work with that. One thing that didn't happen, this wallpaper didn't scale down, so that's another whole issue that I'd have to deal with, and we're not going to go in that direction for you right now. Another thing is the way your desktop looks. So right now you see I have one column here of my tools. If I click this double arrow here, it will make it 2 columns. I tend to have as much screen space as I can. I have the narrower screen. Some people have that nice big wide one. My arm was getting tired going back and forth from the wide one. So there's an advantage to the smaller one too. So I'm going to go back up into Preferences in Illustrator, and under the you can just click straight from there, or you can just toggle through. And in the second level, there's this button that the default is small, and that's for your handle size. So when you're working with the pen tool and you've got those handles, it's nice to have them small so you don't accidentally hit them. But while you're still learning and it's hard to find, you probably want to make that a little bit bigger. I actually just recognized and realized this tool today. I hadn't used that before. And so then if I go down here, we've used units before. We changed the units from points and picas to inches. So, and there was another one in here that I wanted to show you. This one. So under User Interface, this is where you can change the size of the tools here. So you could make them large or medium or small, whichever you choose. I think I'll keep them in the middle there. Okay, and that will actually make that little mini triangle probably easier for you. Now, Scale tool and this Rotate tool, when you hover on something, you can get this to rotate, and you hold the Shift key to go in 45-inch increments, and you can also pull something up to scale it to go larger. But both the Scale tool and this Rotating tool, if you double click, then you can set a set percentage. So if you wanted this to do 180, you could put that in there and know that it would do a total 180. Okay, so these tools right down here, I don't want you to touch. They're perspective tools and we're not going to get into those. So for now, that's the housekeeping I want to show you on that side of the page. Over here on the right side, very often you have these toolboxes set that are much bigger. Like if I click on this assets, so this is a big panel here, and some of you have a whole bunch of panels open here that are taking up a lot of space on your computer. So if there's something that you don't need, so this is, what was in there? It's like, oh, it's gonna spin, 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 spin. So this is character. We haven't gone over that paragraph. These are some things that you probably aren't going to use. We're definitely going to use layers. So what you can do is you can pull the tabs out. So artboards, you might use that, but I actually just click on this tool over here. So if you don't want something, just click it off. Asset export, we don't need that. Open type, you don't need that right now. Paragraphs and characters, you will eventually need those. So if you have those, you hover over here, you take the top bar here and you hover over here and it will sink in there. So if there's something that you perhaps don't need, if you pull it over here, when you pull it out, that's when that X appears, or you can put it back in there. So layers is something we definitely want to use, so I'm going to put that back in there. You might want to organize too, or you might want to shift this up. These both have to do with color, so I like to keep those together. So I am going to shut this image for now. Don't save. Okay, and I'm going to show you some color properties. So here is some, I also thought it'd be fun to show you some different artwork. So here is, again, I worked for a children's museum, so a lot of this is very playful, fun art, but there's a definite color palette in here. And we have two color utensils here. So one allows us to pick a color and go back and forth with it. So if I were to just put a box here and I put up some magenta and some blue and some yellow as the complement, so it really dulls it out. So when you have a, a purple, yellow dulls it because it's the opposite color. If you were to have a blue and you wanted to dull that, if you add both yellow and magenta, because they would make orange, you would dull that. So think about, your basic color lessons will come into play here, okay? So you can play with those to make custom colors. So what I very often do is I copy, paste, 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 and I put all these boxes together when I'm trying to figure out a color palette. So these colors here seem very nice and harmonious, and you see they've used the same purple here as here. This yellow is the same yellow as this gold is the same as this. So they're using the same palette in a number of places. So when I create a palette, say I really like this color, but I need a blue color in here. So I'm going to pull out that yellow. So that blue feels like it balances with that. Now I need a green. So I'm going to pull out that magenta and put a green in there. That seems like it works with that. Now I need a orange. So if I do that, that feels very dull compared to these two colors. So that means I probably pull back on this cyan a bit. Maybe I want to make it a little more yellow too. Sometimes putting yellow all the way up really brightens something. And then maybe this needs to be purple. So I will look at these very often. Actually, I will put them on the white background so that I can see them on white. Another thing that I sometimes do is one of the colors that I'm working with might be a background. So I'm going to say arrange, send to back, and I put all the other colors right on it so I can see how it's going to work. And then also maybe one of those colors you're just going to see a little bit because it's going to be a highlight color, and the others you're going to see as more dominant. So maybe this highlight color really could be quite a bit brighter than these other colors, so it might not be in harmony with the rest, but because it's just going to be in small doses, it's a real pop of color. So that's how I like to create a color palette. And then and sometimes I'll do 3 or 4 of these trying to figure out what I want. And then once you have colors that you like, you can go and open up this color palette here. And so you can select colors that you're going to work with, and you can go up to the hamburger and you can say add selected colors. So it just added those colors into my palette there. So the other colors that are in here are all the colors from this. So you can see these colors up here really are in harmony. These colors don't work with them. And now once I have all these colors here, if there's a whole bunch of colors that I'm not using, I can go up here and say, select all unused. So these I just deleted, so I don't want those anymore. And I can delete them. So I only have the colors that I'm working with there. Okay, so I'm going to show you some other art to go over different fields. So now this has this pale color behind it, which really works nicely with this color palette, which is more pale. So here, this color palette is not these. This is the color palette that comes standard with Illustrator. So I can say, again, select all unused, delete that, and then I can select what's here, and I can go and say, add selected colors, and then I've got my color palette. And then if I go in here and I decide, you know what, I want to change this color palette, and I say okay, and so it went in and changed everything in here to that color. So that's another aspect of using the color palette. I'll do that one more time. So if I click one of these colors and I change the levels of it, I'll make something really dramatic so you'll see the change, and I say okay, everything that had that color in it switches. Okay, so I'm going to show you some other artwork in here that I think is really fun. So now you can notice the way these images are all illustrated. They're in harmony not only with the color, but the way in which they're illustrated. This one has lots of little details like the fur here and the fur here and these little whiskers here. So this is an aspect that this illustrator was playing with. I love the little hearts on the rhinoceros there. So, and then the handwriting that's used in there is quite fun. So each one of these have a slightly different feel to them. So this one has lots of animals. They're much simpler drawings because they're scaled down so much more. And this typography is fun and works with that as well. And then this is quite different. It's very black and white. So this could be, but the shapes of these illustrations are very fun, and the contrast is really nice. So, you know, if you're a minimalist and like using black and white, then go for that too. That's fine. But color can really help strengthen your layout. So I was showing you lots of fun little things, so I thought I'd show you some other types of illustrations. So this is very simple illustration that's used for something more like a infographic. These are Shutterstock images. They're vector files you can buy, just like you can buy photo stock, you can buy vector stock. And I've bought a lot of different vector stock that I will go and you see this has funny words in it and stuff. So it's just there for you to take some objects out of it. Maybe you don't want music notes and you don't want this type here, but you know, you're going to play with some of these shapes. So as you are illustrating, you will probably create an illustration library for yourself that you can refer to. So this is one illustration using a brain, and I thought this might be interesting to show you because this is very often how Illustrator is used and how graphic designers often use Illustrator. So it's very graphic images. They tend to be very flat. And depending on where you are, what your skills are, you may go more into illustration versus something